Well, Nationals Party leader David Littleproud announced this week his party would not be supporting an Indigenous voice to Parliament that will be put to a referendum. It's not going to be a binding vote, and at least one person of the party has already said he will go against that call from his leader. Joining me now is Nationals MP Keith Pitt. Thanks for your time. What's your view on this referendum, whether you'll be supporting it and why or why not?
Well, 25 million people will get their say, Tom. I'll be one of them. I'll be voting no. And that is on a values proposition. My view is very, very straightforward. It's strongly supported in the electorate, and that is that we are one people, we are one country, we're all equal, and that's how the Australians I talk to want to be treated.
Well, how do you say strongly supported in the electorate?
I've had a number of discussions with different individuals. We've had calls, obviously, over the last 48 hours or so. We've had contacts through emails and other sources, and these are always difficult.
It doesn't sound very scientific. You're just saying. Well, Tom, that's your vibe.
Well, what would you like me to say?
Well, if there's been a well-conducted, thorough poll of an electorate, you can say that's what your electorate thinks.
Yeah, but I mean, this is very straightforward. To me, this is a values decision, and you can choose to make a decision to support Labor's voice. I won't be doing that. I will be opposed. The people of my electorate are well aware of that. It's a position I made known some weeks ago.
We don't have the detail yet. Why would you not wait for it?
Well, as I said, I mean, this is a values prospect. You believe all Australians are equal or you do not. And my view
isn't it
is
about, do you believe the voice will help close the gap or do you not? And if you think it will, you could support it.
Well, tell me how it helps one individual, one child that's been assaulted, one case of domestic violence. How does it get one individual in education? And look, I'm with Jacinta Price on this.
Well, hang on. You asked the question. So advocates for it would say this could be a better way, and listening to the community more and having a more authoritative role for First Australians in their own fate can mean that they can get solutions that will actually work, and it could do all of those things.
Tom, I agree with Jacinta Price. Right? She is an Aboriginal woman from the Northern Territory who represents the whole territory and not just one group. I believe all Australians are equal, whether they have a cultural connection.
When you say she represents the whole territory, the whole territory doesn't agree with her.
She's a senator for the Northern Territory.
I know that, but it doesn't mean every single person shares her view on this.
But we are talking about representation. We have a federal parliament. We are all democratically elected. People take the options if they wish to change the government, as they did in May. That's something that I respect. But you've asked for my view and the view of the Nationals Party room, and that's what it is.
I guess the confusing thing for a lot of people is why you've made up your mind before you see the detail.
But as I said, I mean, this is a values decision. If you believe all Australians are equal...
But you're not willing to look at it and go, well, I do believe all Australians are equal, but maybe this is a good way to close the gap, which is not happening with our existing policies.
That sounds like we're all equal, but some are more equal than others. So there are challenging situations across the country in Aboriginal communities, particularly in very remote and regional communities.
Yeah.
And that is something that Senator Price lives every single day.
How would it make things unequal? It's not a body of Parliament. It's not a chamber of Parliament. How would it elevate one Australian above another?
Well, I mean, that's a claim that's been put forward by the Labor Party, that's not how it will work. As you've said, I mean, the detail...
But it's not a claim. It is not a chamber of Parliament. That's not a claim, that's a fact.
Well, once again, they still haven't put the detail out, as you've said.
But hang on. It's not going to be a chamber of Parliament. That's just a fact. Do you agree with that?
Well, Tom, you've asked for my view. My view is I'll be opposed.
I'm asking you if you think it's going to be a chamber of Parliament.
Well, what I'm believing is that if we make changes like this to the Constitution, it does mean that all Australians are not treated equally, and that's not something I'll support.
But you're not answering the question. You think are you saying you genuinely think this is an actual additional chamber of Parliament?
I've read any number of pieces of advice. I've seen the same stories in the media that you've seen from lawyers and others about the challenges that it might create. I think those are all reasonable problems. But the fundamental...
As it stands now, a bill needs to pass the lower house and the upper house.
Correct.
Once this referendum, if it passes, a bill will need to pass the lower house and the upper house, and that's it. Is that true?
Well, that's exactly how the Parliament works, as you know.
So there's no change to that process?
Well, right now, that's exactly right.
If the referendum passes, there won't be a change to that process?
Well, as I've said, I've read the same advice that you probably have. I've seen the same stories in the paper from lawyers and barristers and others about how this could potentially create challenges through the courts. I'm also concerned about that, but I'll come back to the first point I made. This is a values decision. I'll be voting no, but there are 25 million Australians that can make their own choice, and that's the position we're taking.
If your concern is that, a challenge for the courts, you could look at amending the legislation, clarifying that it's not a third chamber, which it isn't, and that's stipulated within it.
Mate, all of those points can be made, and they can be made by the Federal Labor Party if they so wish. But what I also saw in the press this week, and I think this was a very minor story, is the potential that the yes and no cases simply won't be supported in terms of the referendum. They won't have financial support from the Commonwealth for the yes case and the no case equally. It'll be left up to the corporates.
Small government person, you'd appreciate that, wouldn't you?
Well, I think that's a fairly egregious position to take. I mean, referendums, changes to the Constitution are incredibly important, and they should be funded equally as they always have been.
Okay. Let's move on to gas. Perhaps price cap in the area, sort of $12. For a lot of the projects, especially the big ones we've been talking about, profit sort of kicks in at about $4. Price, when they were developed, was sort of $5 or $6 a gigajoule. So a cap of $12 isn't going to send anyone broke, is it?
Well, that's a pretty big assumption. It depends on where you are, how much the exploration cost, how much infrastructure you had to install, where it has to be delivered to. There's a lot of moving parts in the gas price.
Is there a single project in Australia that wouldn't be profitable at $12 a gigajoule?
Oh, that's something to put to the gas companies. It'll depend on content, whether you get condensate, whether there's an additive or something else that you get extra. But right now, the problem is supply in Victoria. I mean, let's be frank, that's where the problem is.
So Victoria should frack, do you think?
Well, Victoria should get rid of the moratorium on exploration. If you don't explore for gas for 10 years, you run out. That's what happens. That is what happened. And now you have challenges in Victoria for gas supply.
But it'd have to be coal seam gas. So you think Victoria should?
Well, I think there's a substantial amount available in Victoria for unconventional development.
It seems the state hasn't been too keen on that, and does that extend to voters when you're talking before about the view of the electorate?
Oh, I think once they start to lose their gas supply in winter, they'll have a different view.
Okay. How could that question be put to Victorians in some way, do you think? Is that a fair enough proposition?
Well, I think they'll find out very soon. When your gas supply runs out and you start to lose lights and power and you don't have the food in your fridge, that's a problem.
Keith Pitt, got to leave it there. Thank you.
Mate, great to be with you.